Welcome to Mini Adventures, where I randomly pick a mini and then we make an adventure based around it. This is the painting video for my adventure that's going to be released in October. The minis that were pulled were two undead characters, a skeletal like figure and a zombie. So there's me just putting a little bit of dry brush on them and now starting to paint with the speed paint. One thing I'd like to say is that I realized very early in recording that there were a couple of issues with my new setup, and it's issues that were easily realized and easily solved. I saw that I was getting certain things out of the view of the camera, and that the focus was not exactly the best. So I made a couple changes to include switching cameras out and moved forward later on. So please bear with me for the first couple minutes of the video as things will get better. So yeah, I drew these two minis and just trying to figure out an adventure with them. I decided right away that I was not going to go with them being the BBEGs of the adventure. So rather, I started working on and coming up with some other ideas. And so, first thing that I'm going to tell you is that they used to be a tiefling. The villain, she was a tiefling when she was born. And so, in the world of Velnyra, how do tieflings work? Well, the tieflings in Velnyra are born from a family being touched by a devil or demon entity. Now, it is not necessarily that the parent of the tiefling was touched. It could have been, or it could have been their grandfather or great-great-grandfather, or someone so far removed that they don't even know. But one way or another, sooner or later, that tiefling will come around and take a child and turn them into a tiefling. Because of this, many people view tieflings as some form of bad omen or view the parents of a tiefling as an evil entity themselves. So this particular child was born a tiefling, and her mother dropped her off at a temple of a town. She was not from that town, but nonetheless, the priest of the temple took her in and started to raise her along with his two apprentices that he had. However, with her being a tiefling, he did not want to train her as a cleric or priest. So, rather, he turned her into the groundskeeper and undertaker for the graveyard attached to the temple. Now, let's talk a little bit about the temple that she was brought up in. It's a temple to all, and these are a very common temple in Velnyra for smaller towns. Real quick break from the lore dump here. Right now, what I'm doing is I'm speed painting over his green pants with a hard leather, and what that's doing is it's allowing us to have two different looks for the pants. When I did that, though, some of the green came off and it looked a little weird, so I went back and put some green back on, which is fine, and it looks a little weird, but this is an undead zombie. He was crawling through mud at some point, probably. So for as close to look a lot of bit weird, that's more than a-okay. Temples to all are temples where they don't necessarily have one specific a deity from the pantheon that they worship. So our main villain grew up in this temple to all, being raised as the groundskeeper of the graveyard and an undertaker. she at some point got very interested in magic and wanted to learn to be a bit of a wizard. And the town decided that it would be best if she maybe didn't do that, mostly because they were freaking out over her demon lineage. You know, where did this demonness in her come from? So they were pretty much like, nope, 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 not going to happen, not going to work here. You are not going to become a wizard. We're not letting you go down that path, just like we didn't let you go down the path of a cleric. But she ends up getting her hands on a spell book and starts to teach herself magic. Now, most people in town didn't even know about this, and the handful that did were kind of like, we're not a fan, but she's probably not going to get very good at this. And so they just let her do her thing. So, real quick, two characters that were important with our main villain's upbringing was the two apprentices of the priest, a human male named Alric and a female half elf named Mayrin. Now, Mayrin and our main villain, who went by the name of Ash, they fell in love and were lovers. Uh, Elric and the two of them were inseparable. The three of them were like best friends. And then the day came that the priest came and told Elric that he must leave the temple and go serve the world and find his place within it and learn more from the rest of the greater world. So Alric left. Shortly thereafter, Mayrin died. Now, we haven't fully fleshed out how Mayrin dies, but she dies. This is kind of a tipping point for Ash. It drives her a little bit into insanity, and she decides that she is going to leave town. Now, nobody has good details of what happens with Ash while she's gone. But nonetheless, sometime after she left, Alric returns, and the old priest continues to get older and passes away. Ash had been out of town for about 10 to 15 years before she returns. And she returns to going back to her duties of the groundskeeper of the cemetery and undertaker. However, some of the people find odd things about with Ash. She's changed a bit, and some of the magical things that occur while she's around just end up being a little troubling to people. So real quick, I just want to hit on what it is I'm doing with this zombie mini right now. I'm just putting different colors into his hair. My goal slash hope with this, and it works out fairly decently, is for his hair to look really mismatched and hodgepodged. So now let's go ahead and get back to the story of Ash. Then rumors start going, and the word necromancy starts being brought up. People claim to have seen small animals and rodents that were once dead alive again. And so, of course, naturally, the accusal goes straight to Ash. Rightfully so, though. They then catch her trying to dig up the grave of Mayrin so that she could attempt to bring Mayrin back to life. And this was the tipping point for the town. They seized her and executed her by chopping her head off. Little did the people of the town know that she had already began the process of lichdom. And this execution happened to have been the final thing she needed to complete her process. Quick little side throwaway thing that I didn't talk about yet. When she came back to town, she had a follower with her. Pause real quick on the story of Ash. What am I doing right here with the metal of our skeletal mini is I'm putting browns on it, trying to, in hope, make it look a little bit more rusted. And I think it works out pretty well. I'm dabbing it off so that it's not this giant puddle of it and that the metal still kind of looks through a bit, but nonetheless. So back to Ash's transformation from Ash into our big bad person for this campaign, whose name is the Autumn Widow. Her lichdom has now been complete, but the townspeople cut her head off and burned it. She was not able to fully come back. Her sidekick, number 2 right hand man, whatever you want to call it, was able to grab a pumpkin and utilize that as a substitute head. I know we're all big shocked and surprised that Mr. Pumpkinhead is here, but it's not Mr. Pumpkinhead. Number 1, it's a Mrs. Pumpkinhead. Number 2, her name is the Autumn Widow. For you see, not only were Mayrin and her lovers, but she actually married Mayrin in secret. Right here, I'm showing off the fact that I'm getting better at thinning down my paint and getting ready to paint the eyes of the zombie and do a pretty decent job of it, I think at least. Then I screw up when I try to put pupils on, and I'm kind of sort of at this point where I think I'm just not even going to bother worrying about doing pupils ever again. So, back to the Autumn Widow. It's been about another 10 to 15 years since the execution of Ash and the incarnation of the Autumn Widow. She is now returned back to the town where she grew up, where she can again try and raise her love from the dead and continue her work. And she can take out all of her anger and frustration on those of the town that she once thought of home and thought people might be willing to accept her. The speed up right here real quick is me throwing some Urgrath Earthshade on there and just getting them to look a whole hot mess of dirty. She did have a couple of things in mind for a few specific individuals of the town. Alric being one of them because, well, he was the leader of the trial for her execution. What am I doing here? Again, I'm putting some blood texturing onto the weapons and trying to splatter blood spray onto the minis. I do a pretty terrible job at this until I start thinning down the paint a bit. Once I thin down the paint a bit, it gets a bit better, but I'm not sure what I'm doing wrong with splattering it. And here I'm putting the blood onto the mouth area of the zombie because I know D&D zombies are more voodoo zombies, but in my head, zombies should be trying to bite people. If you can tell me a better way, the best way, how am I supposed to be doing this blood splatter idea? Do me a favor, drop a comment below telling me what I'm doing wrong, how to get this to actually look really good, even though, looking at this while I'm editing the video, I kind of feel like maybe I did a better job of it than I initially thought I did. And so I'm just about out of time. So if you want to learn more about the Autumn Widow, please hop on over to the Patreon and get signed up. And now it's time for those good old glamour shots of miniatures. Look at them go. Again, this has been Mini Adventures, where I randomly pick a mini and then make an adventure based around it. Do me a favor, do all those great, wonderful YouTube things, like, share, subscribe, all that other fun stuff. Thank you very much, and have a good rest of your day.